Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today we talk with Sam Taggart, the founder and CEO of D2D Experts. We explore Sam's insights on recruitment, what training really looks like, and of course, sales. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore. Let's get into it. Sam Taggart, you are the founder and CEO of D2D Experts. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast.
I appreciate you having me, Amanda.
I'm really excited to get into it. You are doing so many exciting, creative things. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, we always start with a little bit of an icebreaker, a little get to know you, something personal. So what song best describes your life right now?
Probably living on a prayer. I don't know. Oh, we're halfway there. It's like
You know,
I feel like I'm in this like heavy lift in business, and maybe every entrepreneur can relate to this where, I naturally sell. I naturally like to do public speaking and podcasts and write books and all that cool stuff. But like when you're a CEO, you also can't neglect like process and CRM optimization and software connectiveness and development and finance meetings. And so it's been this like 6 months of like stuff I don't like to do. And I've kind of put my head in a hole and just like, process building. That's what I feel right now.
yeah, no, you're holding it all together by a
Yeah.
literal prayer. That's a good song. It's an excellent choice. And yeah, I think it kind of encapsulates everything right now for you. So excellent choice. I genuinely could not answer that question. I am in I'm in mom mode. So maybe row your boat is more my speed right now.
Just keep rowing.
Yeah,
Just keep
exactly.
rowing.
Exactly. So you have been an entrepreneur since basically 7 years old, it sounds like. So can you give us a brief history on how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, great question. I started selling chips and golf balls at the golf course when I was 7, 8, 9, and 11. My brother was like, sell these coupon books. And I did that. And then 13, I started knocking doors selling curb painting. Started a little business in high school and had 11 of my buddies painting curbs for me. And we give a little map quest and bicycle routes. And then 2008, I got into alarm sales. And then did that till end of 15, and then 15 to end of 17 did solar for a couple of years and was a VP of sales there. And then January 2018 was our first door-to-door con. So for the last 8 years, essentially, we're going on. We've built a big training and coaching company around door-to-door sales, helping sales, leadership, and recruiting, and anything from online education to events to masterminds to one-on-one coaching. And we've helped thousands, 60 plus thousand people online. And we've had 13,000 people come to our events. And we've had, 170 hour or 100 or 1,700 hours of content that we've built over the last, 8 years in our platform. And, just done a really cool mission to unify, up level, and bring honor and integrity to the door-to-door space. And I feel like a lot of people listening to this, have either had their door knocked, have people that would like, are or working for them that do that, or want to make more money through sales. And that's what we help companies do.
Absolutely. You have been doing door-to-door sales for a very long time, and I was wondering if I could ask you who Phil from Canadian Texas is and how he kind of changed the trajectory of your mission.
Great question. And I talked about this in a keynote probably 3, 4 years ago at Door to Door Con. And a lot of people get afraid of sales and they're like, I don't want to be seen as a sales guy, or, they don't believe so much in pest control or whatever they're selling. And I think there was a moment where it hit me, and I grew up not even locking my door, let alone had an alarm system. So it was hard for me to like buy into this whole like you have to do it and hard close somebody when I'm like they're probably never going to turn it on. You know what I mean? Like they don't even know what this thing does. I was in this little town of Canadian Texas, and every year I'd kind of go back to the same markets. And I sold this older guy that was a really hard sale. You know what I mean? He lived by himself, and he was kind of one of those dudes that just, it took you 2 hours because he wouldn't close, and finally pushed him over the edge. Well, the following year, I mean, population's 2,000, so it's not a big town. I mean, there was only two of us in the town, and luckily I had built a really strong customer base there. So I love going back, and I'm on the street, and this lady answers the door, and she starts crying. And I was like, well, what the, like, normally they either pull a gun on you or they yell at you or they say piss off. And I'm like, oh, did I say something wrong? Like, did you have a bad day, ma'am? Are you okay? And she was like, no, like, I can't, you're Sam, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, I can't believe it, but I got to take you to my dad's house down the street. You sold him a system last year and it saved his life. And I was like, what? And lo and behold, it was this guy, Phil, that had been down the street. And it turned out he pressed the medical pendant and he had fallen and he couldn't get up. And, you know, you don't know, out of the thousands of alarms that I had sold, and I was the number one rep at Vivint. I was a poster child. I was the guy that broke all the records and did some really cool things there. And I swear, for every account that I didn't even know if they turned it on or not, it all made it worth it, because I'm not God. I don't know who's going to have a fall, a fire, a break in. I don't know who's going to need it. But if I sell everyone, it's now I did my job. You know what I mean? And hopefully they never have to use it. Was kind of my mental shift here. And I think in sales, like, if you look at it like I'm really serving people, I'm a superhero. I'm like, I have to. And I just got done with a coaching call with a pest control rep. It's his 4th year. And this morning he just bought our program, like our coaching program. And I was like, he's struggling. He's like, dude, I've only made $4,000 the last few years selling pest control. And I was like, and you're still doing it? Like, I'm glad, one, we're on this phone call. And I gave him the same advice I'd give anybody listening to this podcast right now. As I said, why don't you call yourself, like, everybody is going to get bit by a black widow if it's not up to you today. And every person you talk to, despite their conviction of like, I don't need this and I do it myself and blah, 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 it is your job to be Mr. Superhero and be like, I am eliminating every black widow in this neighborhood. And I don't care what you tell me, because I don't want to wake up in a news story tomorrow of some kid dying to a black widow. And I wouldn't say it to them like that. But internally, I believe so much in what I'm doing that I won't take no for an answer. I won't bow down, because what if I did, and I did see the news story and I'm like, they could have effing got this from me and probably would have killed that black widow. And whatever you're selling, you can do the same kind of mental shift. And that's what that moment happened for me, was when that Phil story happened.
Yeah, I think you forget when you're in sales, sometimes it's about the sale itself, but really it's about helping people out. And you changed that perspective. When you made that switch, did a light bulb go off, or did you hit even better numbers? How did it affect you overall?
Well, just the conviction. I think,
Yeah.
Amanda, there's so many people, after getting so many no's or cancels or competition cheaper or market shift, that you start to lose faith in what you're doing. And sales is the front line. And so oftentimes we pivot or innovate or go some different direction because we're afraid our product isn't working, when in reality, it might just be your faith in the product isn't working. Does that make sense? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's like reaffirmation of like, okay, I shouldn't listen to the anti-doctrine of I'm scamming people and alarms are crappy and this thing, it's more like, no, I'm doing a good thing despite what everybody out here is telling me. You're knocking on doors, that's bad. I'm like, is it? Somebody marketed you online, that's bad. I'm like, is it? Your email got spammed, is that bad? Is it? I'm like, no, you're welcome. Like, if I didn't do something about this and I didn't show up to your house, you'd never fix it. You know what I mean? You never do the thing. And I firmly believe that. And
Yeah.
so whether your method of selling or what you're selling, I hope you have that conviction.
Absolutely. I know you live in Utah, and we've discussed this before. You enjoy the outdoors, and your winter sport is snowboarding. So
Yes.
my question for you is, what makes a great snowboarder, and which of those skills transfer to door-to-door sales?
It's a fun question. And this year was nostalgic for me because my childhood superstar, Shaun White, actually is one of the main stage speakers at DoorDoorCon, and I got to interview him on that main stage. And he just barely ran the France Olympic torch just a couple days ago.
Wow.
That's going on right now with the Summer Olympics. And so if you take like from one of the greatest snowboarders ever down to me, who's just an amateur, grew up in Park City, I think the risk of failing and getting hurt, I don't think people see the Instagram videos of the cool snowboard jumps and they're like, wow, that guy just landed this epic trick. And you're like, yeah, but how many did he not land? And he was willing to get back up on the hill and try the rail again or try the half pipe again. Or, and I was able to ask like Shaun White and I said, like, what injuries have you had? And he's like, hold on, let me list them out. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, he's still competing, he's still like, so I think what makes a great snowboarder is same thing as a great sales rep is if I broke my pelvis and my arm when I was in high school and I was in a wheelchair for 3 months,
Wow.
and a lot of people don't know this story in the sense of I missed my last half of my freshman year because I had to get homeschooled and I was, sitting there, couldn't walk. I had a broken arm, a broken pelvis, and I learned how to crochet though, and I learned how
Yeah.
to make balloon animals. I learned how to do a Rubik's Cube, but I didn't get to finish basketball season, but I could still snowboard, you know what I mean? And I get back on the board and I'm not like, oh, what if I break my pelvis again? Because I watch sales reps or business owners, what if I get rejected again? What if I invest this money in this rep or this program and it doesn't work like it didn't last time? And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I
Yeah.
think there's a good correlation there of the pain, except the pain tends to be finance or emotion versus you actually breaking something.
Yeah, sometimes it's harder to get over the hurdle of an emotional pain than it is to think of the physical. And really, you're talking about perseverance here,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And thinking of it in that way really changes the narrative, I think, when you put yourself in that position. I know that D2D includes training in several industries. So you have solar, alarms, you have roofing. So what is unique about selling pest control specifically?
It's funny. Pest control can't get innovated. Like, I mean, maybe very slightly. And you look at solar right now, it's just taking a huge hit. And the two industries I really love are roofing, HVAC, like kind of those home, like everyone's going to need something. Bugs are bugs. Like that's just a natural thing. And so pest control was kind of the OG door to door thing. Like this is like the grandfather of door to door was pest control. And what's funny is it's like on this huge comeback right now. Like the guy's making tons of money. I'm talking $500,000 in a summer commissions, knocking on doors at 23 years old, selling pest control. And you're like, what the heck? And alarms. It's like you look at the DIYs innovating it, and now AI, and you're like, why would somebody pay monthly when it's like you could just have it on Wi-Fi now? You know what I mean? All these things where pest control, it's like you kind of still need to kill the bugs and the mosquitoes and the things, right? And the rodents are, and there's not like some AI that's going to disrupt rodent killing. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it just is.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, I looked at our statistics and our biggest rep bought, like we have 32 industries we've serviced. Pest control is our number one industry right now. And we have sold more pest control sales training this year than any of our industries, which is an interesting statistic because we have all sorts of industry specific content, which is very unique to us. There's a lot of sales training like Sandler Hill or Grant Cardone or all these kind of things, but not many industries that have 300 plus pest control sales videos. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That are just like how to sell this thing. And so we service a lot of people because of the specificity of our content. And what I love about it is it's quick because you knock a door, you can same day service it, and you set them up on their quarterlies and you're done. Where with solar, roofing, HVAC, you have to go and submit a permit. You have to wait. You have to go order equipment. You have to go, you think of the barrier to go just from a sales rep's perspective. They're like, I hope it doesn't cancel in 3 months. And the customer is sitting there waiting, and you've got all these customer touch points where pest control is like, spray, done, move on, get them on your route, and you move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in its simplest form, it's like so quick, so simple, and it's so lucrative. When I have friends that have sold their pest control businesses for tens, if not a couple of them on track to do $1 billion in revenue. And it's like, where do you do that? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it seems like pest control, the more I do this podcast and the more I learn, it seems like pest control is one of those industries that, yes, you're right. There can be some fluctuations in the technology of it all, I suppose, but really it comes down to just people getting a service in and out as quick as possible and really connecting with them.
Yeah. And it's fun because you have an emotional sale as much of a logical sale, right? Like you can speak to husband and say, do you really spray your thing every freaking month and kill all the, like, do you do that? No. And then your wife is sitting there bugged because ants are climbing all over her kitchen. And you're sitting there like, nobody likes that. Like it's like you can play on every element of emotion with the pest control sale. You can make this as, theatrical as you want, as you go and poke wasp nests and wasps, and you walk around the backyard and find the mole holes. And you know what I mean? You can really go and point and see and feel as much as the financial element of it. And I think that's what's fun about that sale.
I never thought of it that way. And I think, yeah, there's a lot to work with
Yeah.
within pest control. So this is a bit of a loaded question. So we'll take it in chunks. But what are your top tips for recruiting, for training, and then ultimately to get employees to sell more within your pest control company? So let's start with recruiting.
Yeah. I mean, the formula is simple. How many recruits do you have? How many how many prospects are they talking to a day? And then what's their closing percentage, right? And if you could just get a system, and when I talk about a system, it's like a metronome. Every day or every week, I onboard this many, I train at this rate, I have this much turnover, this much complete like retention, and I do this on repeat. It's easy to scale a company. Where I think a lot of companies get stuck is they're like, oh, I can't recruit because I don't have enough leads. And I'm like, well, there's 1 million homes in your neighborhood. Like, go knock. Like, or, so recruiting specifically, it's what does my ideal recruit look like? So some people are like, I need that young 21-year-old college kid that can only work the summer months, or am I going after year-round guys that are like more seasoned and more, 9 to 5 kind of career-based driven people? And so it's first, what model am I recruiting to? And not trying to be the jack of all the models, it's picking one. And if I'm going to recruit to a summer program, then do that and just kill it in 4 or 5 months. Then try to do a year-round program. If I'm going to do a year-round program, make sure I'm recruiting year-round. And so recruiting, the traditional Utah, Arizona, Idaho type recruiting, which is where a lot of these big door-to-door groups come from, Moxie, the Hawks, the Aptives, the Eco Shields, they're all based out of our backyard. Like I could drive 20 minutes and find 50,000 door knockers. So you go to a campus and you shoulder tap, and the basic, like I'm talking dorm knock. Like you go and you knock dorms and you invite them to a pizza party and you do an information session and you do a big group pitch and you get them on your team and then you nurture them until come April 17th and you do a start date and you kick it off. That is the most basic recruiting tip I could give you. But if I'm trying to go find a pest control door knocker on Indeed, do you think a 21-year-old kid is looking for a commission-based only job on Indeed at the moment?
Yeah, the answer is no.
No, like I'm sorry, you're not finding them there. Does that make sense? That's not where you're going to find a bunch of savage door knockers that are like hungry for commission based. But in today's world, what's funny is they're like the average business owner sitting there going, well, how do I go find guys that will actually work and knock and do X, Y, Z? And hence why we teach this, like our 3 pillars, recruiting, leadership, and sales, is knowing how to find them, where to find them, and where to entice. And then the second piece is most people are deeming the younger generation, these Gen Zs, and they don't know how to work. And I'm like, no. What's funny is most of them actually fit the profile of commission-based entrepreneurs because they want to dictate their own time. They want to make money fast. They want to go, have some variable travel freedom. well, doesn't that fit the mold of our industry? Like, and they don't want to go work for corporate America 9 to 5 with 2 weeks off vacation and only make 60 grand. So it's like, you want the instant results, like sales is the right fit. You want flexibility in travel, summer sales is the right fit. You want, this mentality. So like, why don't I fit my industry and my product and my program to what really these people are asking for in this younger generation? And then how do I build a culture that cultivates that? And it's crazy. There was a kid, sophomore going into junior year of high school, because I'm talking 16 years old. He got a golden door, which is in pest control is 650,000 sold in that year. So 650,000 personal sales revenue serviced. And he did it his sophomore going into junior year. And then his junior year into senior year, did it again. And now he just graduated high school and he's on track to get a double golden door, which would be $1.2 million as an 18-year-old kid in door-to-door pest control serviced accounts in 5, 6 months. Now that's more than a lot of pest control companies do as the entire company. And this is a 18-year-old kid by himself doing it. And you're going to say the Gen Z or Gen Y doesn't work? I mean, he's outworked your whole company for a lot of you guys, and he's just by himself. So yeah. I think that sometimes we neglect what is our culture, which goes into number 2, and what is the culture calling for, or the standards that the culture is calling for? And how do I retain and motivate and inspire? And I watch people recruit all day, but don't recruit them into the right program and training and system. And that's been, I think, the bigger problem, more so than even just how to find recruits.
What you're saying is where to put them within your team and utilize their strong suits.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And do you have a system that you're putting them into? Because, traditional company owner, I find, I want to go get a bunch of door knockers like those Utah guys or whatever, right? And then they're like, they hire 10 guys and they say, go knock. That doesn't work. Like, what training, what motivation, what accountability, what tools, what software, what, you know what I mean? And hence where we come in is we kind of have a turnkey, here you go, on a silver platter. Like, here's proven track record of success. We've probably helped, 500, 600 pest control companies. And it's like, why don't we build out a better, opportunity or soft landing for them to actually be successful, instead of go 2 weeks, quit, and be like, oh, this is never going to work.
It's setting them up for success. Having 100%. The systems in place to be able to send them on their way, and that they have everything in place to ensure that they are doing their best work. So that goes into training, really. So when you're talking about training and these systems that you put in place, what are we looking at here? What are some of the top systems that you're using when training?
Well, so I mean, without self-promoting, obviously we have D2D University, where it's an online education system that already has a ton of pest control or a ton of roofing or a ton of alarms or whatever industry. But there's an online element, there's an in-class element, and then there's an in-the-field element, right? And so you got to look at it as kind of a 3-pronged approach. And training is very different than content, or like, here's my manual. It's like, that doesn't make him trained. That makes them have a resource. Does that make sense? So even if you just bought our online training, where we actually white label, we customize it, we send video guys to your team, and we film and edit and build out your own version of training, because everybody has a different system, a different program. So we really go in deep. Yesterday I found this number, 772 companies we've actually built a white labeled platform for their companies, and thousands of sales reps. Wow. And where my video guys every week are in a different state. But that's one element. And I'm like, that's cool. You got the logins. Now what? And they, that holding them accountable to watching is step 1, but then getting feedback and saying, did you actually learn it, is step 2. So whether they sit in a classroom and say, regurgitate back to me what you watched, make sure that they memorized it, make sure that they can pivot and they can maneuver on different, objections and things like that. That would be done in the classroom. Now on the field is where most people say I'm training is in the field by doing it. LeBron James is not training by playing a basketball game. Training is in the gym. Training is at practice. That is game time. So most people say when you're out there selling is training. I'm like, no, just because you've been selling for 5 years doesn't make you well trained. That just means you've been playing a game. Now, how do you get better? And this kid, it's his 4th year and he's been working for a pretty decent company. And I'm like, how come you're getting the same results that you were 4 years ago? That's frustrating. Just because you've done it 4 years doesn't make you trained. And that is a case in point right there. He's sitting at 40 pest control sales in 7 weeks. And I'm like, did you know that there's a guy in my videos that did 40 in a day? Yeah. So there's the difference. You spent 7 weeks grinding all day and he spent 1 day. And that's the difference between well-trained, not well-trained. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and he's like,
absolutely.
oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, if you could copy exactly what he's saying, what he's doing, how he's thinking, what he's saying, and can we master that? How fast? It's crazy. As I guarantee I get a text message like, dude, I just had my best day today. I get that all the time because it doesn't need to take, people think time equals trained. No, it can happen like this. Like it can happen really quick to get really big shifts and results in this industry. And that's what's so fun. So on the field, which would be the third element, I watch you, you watch me. Now we talk about it. And we give harsh feedback and we say like what worked, what didn't work. That to me is training, and then having real accountability to the training. Because some people are like, oh, I did my onboarding training. I'm like, so you're good? You're a professional now? You're a sales professional. You want to make real professional income. You did onboarding training. Congratulations. Training isn't something we did. It's something we do. Meaning whether you've been there for 5 years or 1 year or 1 month, you should always be training. I'm always training.
Yeah, it really sounds like it's perseverance, I feel like, is going to be throughout this entire episode, where it's really about striving for the best version of yourself.
Yes.
And really just saying like, I have climbed this mountain and now I'm going to go and conquer the next one. And then
that's
conquer
what counts.
the next one.
And that goes to the business owner all the way down to the rep. Because if the business owner has a startup culture of I am always mastering, I am investing in myself, I am training, that is contagious down to the rep.
Yeah, it seems like it trickles down from leadership to employee, and it really is setting that example as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Amazing. We've kind of dabbled in this idea of mindset. So you're an owner, you're striving, you're giving it your best, you're giving it your all, and you have an employee who just seems like they're in a slump. You really like this person, you know they can do good work, but they're in their head about it. What can you do as an owner to help your employee in a situation like that?
Question. I like to analyze if somebody is in a slump, it's usually one of these 3 things. They're bored, they're jaded, or they're lost, meaning they have yet to figure out how, and your job is to help them identify that. So the first thing I would do would be, I would sit down with them and I would ask, okay, is there something wrong that we did? Or do you feel like you were mistreated? Do you feel like you were paid wrong? Because a lot of times it's like they're in a slump, but it's like they're just like retaliating, but it's actually hurting themselves more than it's hurting you. And it's like maybe even something you didn't mean to do or say, or you rubbed him the wrong way and he's just like, F that guy. I'm not helping make him more money. And it's like, dude, my life does not change dramatically if you sell or don't sell. And you kind of have to have that mentality, but they don't get it. So first off, I'd say, can I analyze myself and take ownership of that and amend that? The second thing would be, let's revert them back to lost, meaning that let's recommit them to what they started this for. Why did you join this company in the first place? Why did you leave some Starbucks job? You could go work anywhere. You could be an engineer, a pilot, whatever, right? Like you chose to be a pest control sales guy, or you chose to be this, whatever, right? So it's like, let's talk about that. Why? And why again? Why again? And go 7 layers deep into their why. And then I'd simply say, are they just bored, meaning they haven't had a real growth trajectory? They've plateaued. There's no excitement for them to even make more because they're complacent. They got their needs met. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do you bring variety, give them a leadership track, give them a pathway of success? And I found that if ownership and owners took more ownership of that, all of a sudden their performance will get more in a trajectory of what they want instead of kind of fade in the direction they don't want.
I love this idea of ownership and finding your why or rediscovering your why, because that can be something that really, once you find that nugget, similar to meeting with Phil and meeting his daughter years later, realizing like, oh, I am helping, I am doing something. This isn't something that is negative. I'm making a positive impact. And even just coming from it from that perspective, I think really can recharge someone's battery when they feel depleted in whichever direction. Speaking of motivation, what was your motivation when you first started? And is it the same or has it changed since then?
You know, it's funny, like I was a fourth child, and my older brother's 10 years older than me, and he always kind of was in the spotlight. Like I was always the quiet one.
I
Um,
find that really hard to believe.
I am the quiet one
I
at my
do.
family party. Like I'm telling you, Amanda, go follow my sister on Instagram. Abby's super loud. Go follow my brother, super loud. Like my sister, she's the first on the table at the parties, and I'm like the one quiet. Speaking, like, you know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
what? You're a public speaker, and you seem to be the most extrovert. I'm like, no, I'm the quietest one. I had this almost chip to prove my value, essentially. Coming out of high school, it's like my dad was a successful entrepreneur. My brother was successful. He was, always this great sales guy. And so in my mind, it was like, man, what would my brother do? And so many people say start with their who or why. I say start with your who. Who do you need to prove to? And it could be yourself, it could be your dad, it could be your brother. Like, and I had this like motivation to like say, I am worthy. And this movie Inside Out 2 came out that introduced the new emotions, and anxiety was one of the new emotions. And I think anxiety was interesting because it's like, in the first one, if you those that haven't seen it, you had joy, sadness, anger. Anyway, the sadness was the one that was really undervalued, but it's a real emotion. And I think I had a lot of anxiety of like, man, I want to be something someday. I want to be I don't want to be that guy that was like middle of the pack in anything. And I don't want to be the guy that, kind of half-assed life. And so as I got part of cultures like Vivint, where they had thousands of sales reps, like I just was like, I want to be recognized. I want to be seen. I want to win competitions. I want my name on the leaderboard. And so all of a sudden my motivations weren't so much paychecks. I didn't even look at my paychecks every Friday. I would look at, where do I stand on the standings? And I watched too many reps get stuck on a job when in reality, entrepreneurship and 1099 and commission based is not a job. This is you eat what you kill. And there's a big distinction between the guy doing 40 in a day and 40 every 7 weeks. And if he doesn't take the pride and the commitment level and the using anxiousness to almost be the driver of saying, man, this is embarrassing sitting down this. This is like literally a shame, like how ashamed of my family honor, like Milan would say or something. You know what I mean? Like using that as my driver. And I led my way all the way to the top. I was number one. And out of 3,000 salespeople, it took home a 70-pound trophy. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
my
just like
gosh.
that element of like, oh shit, like he's the man. And I walk across that stage and I'm like Conor McGregor shit, like look at me. And it's funny because then I all of a sudden get off the stage and they go, and the best team was, and some other team comes up and I sit down at the table and I was like, oh, now what? Like it was like I did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I realized at that point I had entered into what was called the success void. And I realized that all of the years leading up to that moment was my motivating factors were just to be seen, to be validated, was to get the accolades. And it started to actually be unhealthy. And I had to do a lot of inner work and a lot of therapy and a lot of personal development to find new motivations. And I went another year and I finished top 5. And then I went into solar because I was realizing that I like to just create. For me, if you look right here in the studio, I have this dope art piece you can't see. And I like to make music, and I like to make businesses. Hence why I have like 7 different businesses and softwares and all this other stuff. And I just think it's fun to build stuff, and ever since I was a kid, I was like, oh, it's not about winning and losing anymore. It's like, I like to compete and that's fun, but I'll compete to you in some dumb card game as much as I will on the sales in the field and turf. Right. And I started to figure out myself, and I wrote a book, and I'll send you a copy if you want, Amanda. Just give me your address. But
Okay.
it's called The Self Experience. And I went on this journey to find, what is it that I really want, not this imposter's wants, not what my owner, my manager, not what, I assume society wants, my spouse, whatever, is to really find the self experience. And what is it that I desire? What is it that my passions are? And how do I double down on that and not get so clouded by maybe someone else's experience, if that makes sense? And yeah, maybe I made a little less in some regards to that, but I sure as heck found a lot more happiness. So now it's more like, what makes you happy? What gives you aliveness is the motivator.
Oh, I love that. What gives you aliveness?
Yes.
Is put it on a pillow, everybody. I'm here for that. I love it. Yeah, it sounds to me like at the beginning, you were really trying to prove yourself amongst a lot of very loud and boisterous people, and getting that acceptance and that love from your family, and
Yeah.
being seen by them and being celebrated by them. And now you've narrowed it down to this idea of aliveness, and you've become a builder, which is very cool and a great place to be. How does it feel when you finish a project now, or you finish a goal now? Do you feel that void, or is there something more?
It feels good. Like, I call this the mountain beyond the mountain principle. And meaning, we're all hiking a mountain, and you get to the top of the mountain. And I remember this hike. I hike a lot, and I get to I'm like, I want to get to the top of that mountain, like every other dude does, right? Like, they're like, that mountain, I will conquer it. And I get to the top, and I'm like, oh shit, there's like tons of mountains beyond this mountain. I'm like, what about that one? And I'm like, oh, that's way far. You know what I mean? And it's like, and in life, it's that way, right? You have this project, this goal, you get to there, and then you realize life didn't end, and there's another mountain. And so I started saying, how do I plan beyond the mountains? So there's things that you yet to see, that the more I create, I'm creating 3 steps ahead. So like, a lot of people are like, what's your New Year's resolution, your goals this year? Well, then, okay, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year, your 15-year, your 30-year, your 100-year, your 1,000-year? Like, your 1,000-year goal, you're gonna be dead, right? Yes.
Yeah,
But what if I
hopefully.
start planning? What if I start planning, like, how is my name going to be remembered through generations and legacies? Like, now I'm talking mountains beyond mountains, and I'm starting to plan way farther and think bigger. And so it just becomes a fun game of, like, one of my favorite songs is called Stupid Deep by John Bellion. And he talks about, like, what if where you're meant to be is always here? And I have a tattoo. One of my only tattoos says now. I don't wear a watch, because there's this balance between achievement and alignment, and I call it achignment. And when you ask me what time it is, I say the time is now. And it helps me stay grounded and present, but at the same day, I'm still chasing achievements because it's fun. We're built to create and have fun. And it's like the sandcastle principle. God goes, you have this massive, beach with tons and tons of land and sand, and you can go create whatever castle you want. And all of a sudden the wave knocks it over, and it's over. And you look up and you're seeing all these other sand castles down the beach, and that's cool. They created something big. They created something little. We're all creators. We're built this way. And I think the fun part is in building the sandcastle. The fun part is, and you get to design whatever you want. And I think too many people forget they're in the driver's seat. They're the ones designing. They're the ones that hold the pen and get to draft however they want their life to be. But too many people forget, and they maybe lost that whole touch of they get to be the creator of their life. And so I always keep these achievement in perspective of, like, I'm the one creating my outcomes and achievement, but I'm also staying in alignment with, like, not losing myself, because I watch too many people lose themselves in their business and money, and then they wake up and they're not happy, and they don't have a good relationship, and they're not healthy, and and they think, oh, I got to grind. And I'm like, that's a whole myth. It's a myth.
Yeah. Absolutely. Speaking of building sandcastles, what projects are you working on that you're really excited about right now?
I've got a cool book coming out with Penguin Random House in January. So the project's done. I'm just not waiting.
Yeah. Well,
I've got an app that
congratulations.
thank you. That's fun. I've got an app that I've built over the last 2.5 years that goes live tomorrow or like in a few days, the
Oh
first
my
version.
gosh.
So beta comes out like soon, within the next few days or week.
Wonderful.
And it's called Expand, and it's a human development system. I found that there's a lot of cool tools out there for coaches and managers and leaders, but there's not like an all-encompassing tool for communication, goal setting, learning, um, tracking, reporting to develop the human, right? Like I consumed YouTube content that doesn't necessarily track, did I develop myself? I read a book that doesn't necessarily develop me. Like I can read it, consume. That's one thing. But like, okay, think of like coaching, like you're going to do a Zoom call like this, or you're going to do a one-on-one interviews and talk about goals. But where do those goals live? They live on your Google Doc or some like note that you took on a piece of paper. Like, so it's like, how do we actually take the leadership tools and put it into one software? And it's been a 2.5 year build, and it's supposed to come out DoorDork 6, supposed to come out DoorDork 7, and I'm hoping the full thing's done by DoorDork 8. So it has been
I
a
think it
much
will.
bigger project than I was expecting, a lot more money than I was expecting, but that'll be fun. So
That sounds it's really about the habits, it sounds like, and
yeah.
implementing what you're consuming
So it
as
has a
opposed to
habit
just like,
tracking system. It has a check-in system. It's really, really cool.
oh, that does sound cool. I'm all about accountability.
Yes.
I don't get anything done without accountability. I just know
The
that
the
about myself.
the motto of it is keep score,
Very cool.
And I just hired a fitness trainer, and he's like, that's great. You're really good at working out. But he's like, you're always going to look like you look until you start tracking every macro. We'll start
Wow.
there. And I was like, oh. So he's like, get the MyFitnessPal. I was like, okay. And then I was like, I don't want to upgrade to the premium. I'm too cheap, right? And I'm like, I'm being too cheap about my health. Like, what am I doing? And I just watched the same cycle that everybody gets in is they don't want to log that one ice cream that they had last night, which I did. And I'm like, put the cup of ice cream on the damn MyFitnessPal and stop being such a punk and say to your coach, and I ate ice cream tonight. Did it fit or did it not in your macros? I didn't get my protein in today. Did it fit or did it not? Because that's how you grow. And too many people are too egotistical and too afraid to hire a coach, to go pay for some training, to have some accountability. I mean, we've been doing this for 8 years, and I just watched the difference of the people that do and the people that don't.
It sounds to me like you have taken this idea of living your life as an example to the fullest, and it really is reflecting of all of your projects that you give your all and it shows.
Well, let's go back to just simple. What drove me at the very beginning is if I'm going to do something, I want to be good at it because I take pride in what I do. And I watch too many people taking their business way too casual. I take too many people taking their relationship way too casually, their health way too casually. Oh, I've always been kind of tubby. It's like, well, then take it serious. Like you just probably never taken it really serious. It's your freaking health. So I watch people not be good in those categories, or they sacrifice one category of life for another instead of saying you can have it all.
Absolutely. It's words to live by. Do you mind going into the partnership you have with Field Routes?
Yeah, so it's really cool. Like we've started to develop even content specific to the field route user. And we said, hey, how do we go give access to our online training built in and build some really cool key partnerships with field routes? Because we believe, from they have tons and tons of clients that, from technicians all the way to sales reps that are using this tool. But the problem is we watch this industry as being way undertrained. And I believe there is so much just like neglect to, we have people, but the tools and the know-how is missing. And if we just gave them that. And so we've offered some really cool deals with Field Routes. So any customer of Field Routes gets specific pricing, they get specific exclusive content, and built a way to where we've really created and deepened that relationship, because I don't think there's anyone in the pest control sales world that has even come close to training the amount that we have. And we're like, how do we expand that to a broader audience? So
Absolutely. Expanding your reach. I love it. Congratulations. I know that a lot of people are going to really benefit from that
thank
content.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I know I had a great time. This is a very inspirational episode. I had a wonderful time, and we hope to hear from you again and hear how you've been.
Love it. Thank you for having me.